Yes. And um, my name is Igor Gordon. And on behalf of the Eurasian Harm Reduction Association, I'm really glad to welcome you to this webinar dedicated to a topic that is rapidly evolving and increasingly relevant for our region. This is associated therapy. And so we, as early this year, our organization adopted its position statement on the regulated therapeutic and medical use of psychedelic and cannabis, which emphasizes that access to these therapies must be grounded in science, ethics, and human rights rather than fear, stigma, and outdated assumptions. And so, this webinar, we decided that it's very timely to conduct this webinar because this is our new strategic direction for like strengthening our collective knowledge and advocacy and capacity on emerging topics in public health and drug policy. And I think during these, let's say, 90 minutes, we will look at the scientific evidence behind psychedelic-assisted therapy and recent policy and regulatory development in Europe and also in Ukraine. And also, maybe we can discuss during this webinar opportunities for harm reduction and for advocacy, what we can do in our region to promote this innovative approach in our region. And so during today, we will have three excellent speakers. And we will start with the Dr. Jose Antonio Campos Perez. I'm sorry if I'm spelling wrongly. Dr.
Perfect.
Okay, so Dr. Jose is consultant psychiatrist at University Hospital Alvara Conquiera in Vigo, Spain. He's researcher at Galicia Sur Health Research Institute and member of the National Addiction Research Network. And I will give the floor to Dr. Jose Antonio Campos. And so, please.
Okay. I'm gonna begin to share my presentation first. Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here and to speak with you. I haven't been in your area, but it's a pleasure to be here, like on internet or with you. So hope one day can visit your countries. Let me see. Okay, here we go. I think, uh, is it okay?
Yes, it's okay, but could you please?
Okay, yes, the presentation mode. Okay, okay, so here we go. Um, so thank you very much for your invitation. Um, I'm Jose Antonio Campos. I'm a psychiatrist working at the University Hospital Álvaro Cunqueiro in Galicia. And I'm a researcher, as you said, of the Galicia Sur Health Research Institute. And I also serve as head of research on the board of the SEMSI, which is a National Society of Psychedelics. It's the only one that we have here in Spain, and I'm the head of the research. Um, and I would like today to give you a brief overview, as you asked me, um, of where Europe currently stands with psychedelic medicines, how is Spain fits into this context, more or less. And finally, a short example of from our clinical and research work here in Galicia. Let me begin with the broader European landscape. Okay. Um, Across Europe, we are seeing a rapid expansion of scientific evidence, particularly in psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression, MDMA also for PTSD and also for depression, and the well-established use of ketamine and esketamine right now. Esketamine from a couple of years, 3 years more or less, and ketamine since a long time ago. A central theme is the recognition of that these treatments combine a pharmacological component with a psychotherapeutic progress. That's important. Preparation, support, and integration are essential to the therapeutical outcomes. At the same time, Europe is advising in a unknown way, with some countries moving quickly and others, as Spain, that are more cautious, that moves slowly. But overall, this is a growing clinical, scientific, and policy interest. This leads directly to how regulation is evolving right now. Regulation in Europe is highly heterogeneous. Switzerland, for example, has operated, as you see, a controlled medical access sorry, system for LSD, psilocybin, and MDMA for several years, with more than 700 patients treated under strict clinical oversight. Germany, for example, has opened a compassionate use pathway for psilocybin in treatment-resistant depression also. And the Czech Republic went a step further in 2025 by approving medical psilocybin for depression, PTSD, and addictions with mandatory psychotherapy. That's important. At the European level, the MA has included psilocybin in its guidance for depression research, but not approved, which signals a shift towards mainstream scientific consideration. In parallel with these regulatory changes, scientific activity is moving forward, is accelerating a lot. Scientifically, Europe is progressing very quickly, I think. One consistent finding across the studies is that psychedelics may reopen critical periods of neuroplasticity and changing the brain's capacity for emotional and cognitive changes. But outcomes depend strongly on the context. It's really important. Don't forget the set and settings, for sure, with these therapies, on preparation, therapeutic framing, and integration, all of the things that happen in the process. The medicine is not the only molecule. It is the whole process, the entire process. You is also producing high quality independent trials. For example, two examples I'm bringing you here. This one is called Episode. It's a publicly funded randomized trial in Germany, testing psilocybin assisted psychotherapy in about 140 patients with treatment, as said before, most of these trials with TRD, with treatment-resistant depression. Okay? Directly, they compare this to an active psychotherapy-only control group to establish added therapeutic value, for instance. And the other one, the other big one is this one, what is called PsyPal project. Is a multi-country Horizon Europe student and evaluating psilocybin-assisted therapy for existential and psychological distress in palliative care patients using a harmonized psychotherapy protocol. Together, these trials show that Europe is actively generating rigorous evidence. And with that broader context, let me move now. How is the situation in my country here in Spain? In Spain, there is currently no authorized clinical use of psilocybin, MDA, or other.
I'm sorry to interrupting you. I think it's some problems with the slides.
Is not working?
No, it's not.
Okay, let me stop sharing and begin again. Is it going?
Yes, now we see it.
Okay. So I was beginning to speak about how is the situation here in Spain. So in Spain, there's, as I said, currently no authorized clinical use of psilocybin or MDMA or other psychedelic. All administrations must occur with the national, we call here AIMS, is like the national pharmaceutical institution here that approves clinical trials and we must follow, of course, all the international standards. Even with that, the interest has grown a lot, considering we have here, I think, that it's beginning to be a very big interest for all our colleagues. Several hospitals are now involved in feasibility processes for psilocybin and 5-neo-DMT. That's another psychedelic. And the ethics committees and the hospital pharmacies have become increasingly familiar with these controlled substances in research. The Spanish clue is that Spain has a strength lies in, it has a very big and strong public system with a lot of big hospitals like mine here. We attend here, for example, in my hospital, a population about 500,000 people, and it's 1,400 beds, for example. Psychiatry, we have 70. My unit here is 70 beds, but it's a acute unit, no, where I work. So that's our main capacities, that we have a very strong public system and strong research units and national networks like Cybersam or RIAPAD. We are here in both of these, that supports high quality multi-center studies. This foundation is not new. Spain has a meaningful scientific history in psychedelics field, as you can see here in this slide. No? In the late 80s and the first 90s, Dr. Boso conducted one of Europe's first MDMA-assisted psychotherapy protocol, methodologically advanced for its time. But well, it was not really weird years, and the government forced him to stop his study that was really amazing and really important. In the 20s and the 2010, Rivas group in São Paulo hospital became internationally recognized for their neuroimaging and pharmacological studies on ayahuasca. So while the regulatory progress has been conservative, and in many parts of Europe and the USA and other countries, the research was like stopped or paralyzed, or not in the first stage. The scientific interest here in Spain was really important and continuous, and have provided us a lot of base for the current developments that we are doing right now. So, well, we're part of the story of our country and of our researchers. No? And what we're doing right now is, because of them. So it's kind of be grateful for the works to others colleagues that did a good work before. And let me illustrate, for example, what we do here in our hospital and our center. At our hospital here in Galicia, which is a part in the northwest of Spain, it's a community. It's nearby. You probably know Santiago de Compostela. It's in the border of Portugal. My city is in the border of Portugal. So it's in the north of Portugal and the corner of Spain. It's where I live. It's a medium city. We run a comprehensive program for TRD, treatment-resistant depression. We work routinely with esketamine, intranasal, and intravenous ketamine, TMS, and ECT. All these treatments that require structure monitoring and close psychiatric supervision. This experience gives us a strong foundation for the future psychedelic work. We are familiar to this rapid acting mechanism, not ordinary states of consciousness, strong safety protocols, and psychotherapy combined with pharmacological treatment. We've also will participate in multicenter trials as Hippocrates. It's with esketamine, and where I serve as a principal investigator. And this connects with my main research right now that I would like to share it with you, which is about my PhD that I'm gonna finish in a couple of months. Focuses on biomarkers and dissociative mechanism in chronic pain, combining proteomics with psychological markers of altered states of consciousness in patients treated with esketamine. These processes, such as emotional regulation, sensory modulation, and embodiment, overlap with several mechanisms involving psychedelic-assisted therapy. That's why I bring here, because how the improvement of patients that are treated with psychedelics share the same pathways that esketamine. Esketamine, in some places is ketamine is considered as a psychedelic. In other places is considered as a dissociative, but the mechanism of action shares a lot of pathways with the classic psychedelics also, you know. And I'm finishing with this background. Let me really mention the psychedelic trials we are preparing. We are getting in touch with the new industries, with the new companies that are going to provide some trials, and we are going to be involved in some of them. I'm going to show you which one. We are right now involved in feasibility processes with two sponsors, with Beckley, Psychiatrist, it's a tie. We are preparing for a phase. It is not, it's a mistake. It's a phase 3 program using 5-MeO-DMT, a very rapid and intense compound, requiring close monitoring and also a structured psychotherapy. Also, we are in a process to participate with UH Research, engage psilocybin for TRD and PTSD. And operationally, our center is ready to participate in many trials. We have a lot of staff and a lot of utilities and facilities. It's a very big and modern hospital with storage and THCVs, GCP trained investigators, nothing specialized in psychiatry, nursing staff, really strong big hospital pharmacy, and biomarkers platforms, including proteomics and also EEG, of course, and imaging. Um, so we are like really excited to participate in these new trials. The first trials here in Galicia, not in Spain, as in a few only, but here in Galicia is going to be the first one, and for us it's really excited to become part of these trials. Um, yeah, and to finish, let me highlight the key points that I would like I just brought to you. To summarize, Europe is advancing very quickly, although unevenly across countries. Spain is a caution for now, but scientifically very well positioned, I believe. Same implementation of psychedelic therapies will require rigorous structures, including psychotherapy, training, and patient safety. And overall, there's a strong opportunity to build an evidence-based and ethically robust model for psychedelic medicine in Europe. Um, yeah, before closing, I want to underline one essential point that I believe is if psychedelic therapies are to become part of the modern clinical practice, their implementation must be rigorous and grounded in evidence. That's important, I think. They require controlled environments, trained professionals, a structured psychotherapy, and clearly defined protocols. Without these elements, we risk repeating the historical mistakes that contribute to global prohibition uh, years ago, decades ago, in the 60s and the 70s. I mean, so we have to be very rigorous with our use and with our evidence and how we use this great new treatment for a lot of the a lot of the patients that we have with depression or PTSD or addiction. That is gonna be really important in that part. I know that you work with them, yeah, so it's going to be really important. So I think it's thank you very much for your attention. And if anyone can, I don't know if the questions is right now or maybe later, uh, I'm here to answer if I can the questions you have. And I'm gonna stop. Here's my are my email. So if someone want to write me or contact me, I can leave it like a couple of minutes so you can, or seconds, so you can write it down. So thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, thank you, Jose, for this very interesting presentation. So this is really new for most of us in our part of the region. So, and it's not maybe at least for me, it's not easy to understand everything because this is very specific topic. But so right now we have time, a couple of minutes for questions. Uh, Dear participants, if you have any questions, so you can ask now, or you can use chat for writing your questions, so we will address them later on. So, I have a question. So you just mentioned that there is a position and the other attitude of prohibitionist to this situation. I just wanted to ask you how you communicate the results of this or the process of this in your country. How open you with having a conversation with the public or in mass media, or it's
Yeah,
just within the professional uh, environment, all this information circulated.
Yes, it's beginning to circulate right now, and we are really careful with these first um, communications that we are giving right now, because we have to make sure that the people, the government, and also the society understand that it is a question of health. It is not I mean, we try in all our communication to um, uh, that the people that receives the information uh, know that it's the use that we are gonna do is different from the recreational use that people actually do. So we have a lot of people using psychedelics in recreational use, but the important question is that these substances are really linked with the set and setting. And as I said before, it is really different that a person take psilocybin, uh, going outside in the night, probably drinking alcohol, than the way the it's gonna be used for no, for example, at a hospital with two people preparing them days before the administration. The patient is gonna know what he's gonna try, what are the possibilities about side effects, or what he's gonna feel or suffer or whatever, and then how it's gonna to after the exposition, how it's gonna work with in therapy in order to clarify all the experience. And it's we have to make sure that the people understand that it's gonna be a treatment, not a recreational use. That's, I think, the very beginning, first important information that we have to clarify. But it is important the set and setting, and it is because there's a big research before and behind we can use this substance in this particular way.
Yeah, thank you. So one question from the chat. So can we share your presentation with participants of the webinar?
Yes.
So well, you will send it later on, and so we can.
I can.
I'm just
Yes,
asking your
yes,
permission to share PowerPoint slides with the
yes,
participants
yes,
of the.
yes. I will send it to Maria, and I can share it.
Yes, okay, thank you. So, and there are another question in the chat. Are there specific training programs for psychotherapists who can provide processing and integration of the experience?
Yes, there are international, probably later Chris Jenkins would give us more information, but I believe, I mean, I know that there are some international institutions that give some training for psychotherapy. For example, MAPS, I don't know if you know that foundation, for example, or ICEERs, uh, are some of these institutions that if you Google those names, they can bring you a specific and really structured training for psychotherapy. Um, right now, it is in the very beginning. In the very beginning, we here in Spain, our society, the SEMSI, the National Psychedelic Medicine Society, we are beginning the University of, I think it's São Paulo. We are beginning the first, master. Uh, mm, Respalded with a university behind in Spain about this psychotherapy. So they are beginning right now to be uh, more courses of this type, but there's not a lot, and you have to be aware of what you are doing. Uh, I am in these trials that for example, I shown you. these trials support you with training, because they need that the participants know the type of psychotherapy that they need, or that they are researching with. So more or less, it's what I can say to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jose, very much for your answers and for your excellent presentations. So I think with this, we can move to another excellent presenter. So it's Chris Jenkins. So Chris is co-founder of OEV Partners and UK-based consultancy, working to advance evidence-based policy and shift public attitude on psychedelic-assisted therapy and mental health. So Chris, the floor is yours. So you can start sharing your presentation now.
Sorry, bear with me while we get the sharing sorted.
That's fine.
You seeing just the slides or?
Yes, we see just a slide, no notes.
Right, great. So, hi everyone. I just want to start by saying it's a real pleasure to be here for this seminar, and also to speak along esteemed colleagues. So thank you for the kind invitation. I'm going to talk about the re-emergence of psychedelics in recent years as medicinal therapeutics, and some of the progresses and challenges as we go from the renewed collection of evidence about their effectiveness into actually implementing them as treatments that people can legally access, with a particular focus on what's happening in the UK. So apologies, I probably will be covering some of the same ground that has just been covered, but hopefully there'll be a slightly different slant, and that will just help to sort of deepen people's understanding on those topics. So as I said, my name's Chris Jenkins, and along with my business partner, Neil Woods, who some of you may be aware of from his drug policy advocacy. I run a consultancy advocating for called OV Partners, advocating for the fair, affordable and accessible development of the psychedelic therapy or treatment sector in the UK and beyond. And as I'll explain, there are some particular challenges that make it important to keep that in focus. But first, I'd like to start by giving some background to how we got where we are, that psychedelics are now becoming available as medical therapeutics in a growing number of countries, and there are growing demands from other countries. Before doing that, though, I need also to talk about the problem that psychedelics should be part of the solution for. I realize that these issues may not be new to a lot of you, but I think it bears restating as the size and urgency of the problem and the scale of human suffering. And this is in the UK, a modern society in peacetime with a supposedly universal healthcare system. And that problem is the high prevalence and significant and lifelong impacts of trauma. Starting with prevalence, as shown in the first image, the incidence of adverse childhood experiences in the UK is very high. Nearly 50% have experienced at least one type, and 10%, that's 2.5 million adults, have suffered 4 or more types of abuse, neglect, or other adverse childhood experience. Repeated studies have shown that these experiences have a long-lasting impact, with adverse childhood experiences strongly correlated with a significantly higher risk of a number of different life-affecting conditions, including serious physical and mental health problems. Importantly, there's now a growing body of evidence establishing plausible mechanisms by which chronic stress or trauma impacts physical health. I've highlighted one here, which is inflammation, but there are others. And in addition to, but often overlapping with, there are groups of people affected by chronic toxic stress during their lifetimes, principally those in high-risk occupations, such as the emergency services, with staggeringly high incidences of PTSD and complex PTSD. I've highlighted police, fire, and health workers here, but could also include veterans, prison officers, social workers, and other non-occupational groups, such as survivors of domestic abuse or sexual violence, and of course, refugees. So it's a significant problem affecting many different groups across society. So there are two challenges: to help people already suffering the consequences and to prevent or limit adverse childhood experiences from occurring. There are, of course, major socio-economic and environmental factors that are causes, but here today in this presentation, I'm going to concentrate on mental health. And as I'll touch on, the pre-existing dualistic paradigm that is physical and mental health being separate is gradually being challenged and replaced by a whole body person approach. And psychedelics is a key part of that. So if you want to help mental health, if you help mental health, you'll help physical health. So what are current solutions? In terms of solutions for antidepressants, by even the best estimates from clinical studies, 30 to 40% of people don't respond. And that would be a significant number anyway, but you also need to consider the side effect profile that those who do respond have to tolerate. Data from real-world settings shows an even worse picture. And for PTSD and complex multi-layered PTSD, data that does exist shows treatments can be effective, principally based on desensitization and constantly re-experiencing trauma. But because of that, they have a very high dropout rates and they're difficult to tolerate. As an example, veteran PTSD shows only a 40% remission rate, leaving a significant number of people failed by treatments. Looking at treatments for alcohol and other drugs, they have similar or worse levels of effectiveness. And as the quote on the bottom right encapsulates, from a study into care models in the UK, experiences for dual diagnosed patients are often poor. There's a significant gap in effective provision, both in mental health and substance use treatment, and particularly in the overlap. What's currently being done is not working. There is something wrong with the dominant models and a shift is required. So can psychedelics be part of that paradigm shift? So a very quick recap on the history of psychedelics as medicines shows that there are considerable bases for thinking that they can be. Starting in what we could now call the classical period, as it provided a lot of base knowledge from where psychedelics first found their way into psychiatric use. During the 50s and 60s, when LSD and psilocybin were both used in clinical practice, up to 40,000 patients were successfully treated and over 1,000 scientific papers were published. Although, as the previous presenter mentioned, some of the standards of science were in some ways questionable, but there was also got a lot of good evidence. So this is in a context where people never got better. These were first psychiatric drugs that actually worked. Then came the backlash as reaction to the counterculture movement and the anti-Vietnam War protests. Psychedelics were made legal. Research and medical use of classical psychedelics was stopped, but continued underground, led by lay practitioners. In the process, developing the models that are the basis of best practice today. And in this period, MDMA also emerged, being used to treat around 4,000 patients before itself being banned. Experts and enthusiasts continue to push for change in attitudes, and a number of factors combined, such as improvements in neuroscience and brain imaging. But politically, the veteran suicide crisis in the US was probably the most important in garnering bipartisan youth support and changing attitudes. This led to the renaissance we are now in, and a massive and continuing increase in research, with the class of psychedelics now considered therapeutically useful, and expanded from classics such as LSD and psilocybin, also to include MDMA and ketamine, and shorter-acting psychedelics such as 5-MeO-DMT and DMT. And ever-growing evidence showing transdiagnostic efficacy across a range of conditions. So how do psychedelics have such transdiagnostic efficacy? So again, this probably won't be new to quite a lot of you here, but it bears talking about. So for people who have suffered trauma, there are effects both in the mind and the body. Rigid negative patterns of thought develop as a response to violations of trust and power, loss of agency or overwhelm. The narratives persist and are deeply held, often very resistant to change, as they are part of the life story and a way of making sense of what happened. If I wasn't bad, why did this happen to me? People have hurt me, so why should I feel safe now? These experiences of overwhelm also get stored in the body and are expressed in various ways, which this diagram sums up well. These symptoms manifest in conditions that are diagnosed as depression and PTSD, often characterized as treatment resistant, and often drive coping strategies such as substance use. There are also associated patterns in brain activity that match these patterns of thought. Psychedelics have been demonstrated to disrupt the brain patterns associated with these rigid patterns of thought. And they do this in a number of ways. In fact, because of some people's willingness to sit for hours in a brain scanner whilst tripping, we know more about how psychedelics work than any other psychoactive drug. In the acute phase, there is a massive disruption to the normal activity of the brain. As this first image shows, the extent of connections between brain regions increases, but importantly, control is loosened. So some of the manager regions go offline or reduce in activity, allowing new possibilities and experiences of the world to emerge. At the physical biological level, this is accompanied with and driven by a surge in neuroplasticity, which is a growth of new connections in the brain. And these changes endure. There are also associated increases in the production of certain hormones, such as oxytocin, which drives bonding and relationships. This is experienced subjectively as a loosening or opening up. On psilocybin or LSD, experiences such as connectedness, coming back to wholeness, or oceanic boundlessness are common. Importantly, new possibilities and perspectives become available about the self, others, the past, and the future. The strength of the subjective effects directly correlates with positive outcomes, including reductions in depression and anxiety. For MDMA, the key mediating subjective effect is experienced as an increase in self-compassion or forgiving oneself. These experiences may not be easy and may involve dealing with challenging material, but the reprocessing and reintegrating of traumatic experiences can be a key factor and first step in bringing back a sense of positive self-regard and a reconnected body and brain. But this is only the beginning of the story. Recent research has demonstrated that along with the intense acute effects, psychedelics also open an extended critical period. Critical periods were first discovered by Konrad Lorenz. This is the guy in the photo on the left, who showed that ducks have a short period after emerging from the egg when they would imprint who their mother was. He showed that he could get them to view them as their mum, hence why they're all following him in this picture. Psychedelics reopen a critical period, which is when the brain is especially primed to learn or imprint new behavior for social reward learning. Essentially, you mean people are able to relearn how to connect with others and also with nature and the wider world. This renewed sense of connectedness is key to long-term benefits. So this means future protocols where psychedelics are used therapeutically, as was previously mentioned, have to bear this in mind and ensure that the right long-term support is in place along with the preparation and control of the setting to help people make sense and meaning of their new ways of thinking. They work best when accompanied with therapy rather than as standalone drug treatments. Indeed, that therapy is essential, and some have suggested that rather than psychedelic-assisted therapy, which was the term that had been used, it should be described as therapy assisted by psychedelics. The structure and protocol shown here, taken from two of the leading clinical trials, are an example of where knowledge from the classical period have been developed into modern therapeutic protocols. So how close are we to these treatments becoming available in the UK and elsewhere? What do we need to consider in how we prepare for them? So as there are many different psychiatric drug development programs, this chart might be a bit difficult to read, but I think it gives a good sense of quite how much work is going on to try and bring a psychedelic drug to market. We can discuss if that's actually the best way to get wide-scale access, but undoubtedly this development of knowledge and evidence is making a key contribution. This chart actually shows where different drugs are in the passage through to approval, meaning phases 1 to 3 in clinical trials, and then approval by a regulator. Most commonly the FDA in the US, as that's the biggest market and would gives access to other markets. That's where a lot of companies concentrate. But it's been a difficult path so far. So as can be seen from the close-up on the right, there's only one approved psychedelic drug at the moment, which is Spravato, or a branded version of esketamine, which, as I'll cover, is a bit of a cautionary tale. Getting a drug through development to approval is a complex and expensive process, with funders wanting to know how they will get their money back. The application for approval of MDMA was rejected by the US FDA in 2024, and this had some impacts on drug company strategy. Understandable pressures to deliver a return on investment, accompanied by the regulator's difficulties in evaluating a drug plus therapy combination, have led to drug developers and potential providers adapting their strategy and models. Some of these adaptations can be positive, such as the development of group models, which offer inbuilt connectedness opportunities, peer support, networks, and lower cost. Others, such as remote delivery or telehealth, whilst lowering prices and increasing accessibility, risk lowering standards of care by removing trained support. Further, a push to reduce the level of support provided from therapy to just psychological support risks removing one of the most effective components of what helps people get better. But as affordability is a key component in enabling access, we must be open-minded and ready to learn and adapt these as new treatments come online, and balance commercial pressures with patient needs. As a cautionary tale and glimpse of a potential future, if we don't work to ensure high standards of care, here are a couple of experiences from treatment with Spravato in America, which, as I mentioned, is the only approved branded psychedelic. The Spravato model is to attend a clinic with just a nasal ketamine spray and then wait for an hour before leaving. As can be seen from these comments, this can lead to unexpected unwanted experience or side effects, such as Amazon spending sprees. The important point is this the kind of person-centered treatment we want? So what's the situation in the UK? In terms of developing the science, it's playing a key role via its universities and centres of excellence. For example, there's a recent innovative study launched on using psilocybin to treat opioid use disorder. There are also a number of major companies working to develop treatments that are based in the UK. The two major ones are Campos Pathways, who are currently running 2 phase 3 trials on their patented formulation of synthetic psilocybin for depression, and Atai Beckley, who are, among other treatments, running trials on short-acting psychedelics, 5-MeO-DMT, for alcohol use disorder and depression. And there's also a phase 3 trial for ketamine and alcohol use disorder being run in conjunction with the National Health Service. However, elsewhere in the UK, progress is frustratingly slow. Despite special access schemes that provide compassionate use being in place in some other countries, the Royal College of Psychiatrists take a cautious view. No wish for radical action to address the widespread crisis in mental health, or even consider potential options. Governments, both Labour and Conservative, have likewise been very cautious, rejecting calls to consider rescheduling psilocybin and giving minimal concessions on the regulations researchers have to follow. Some would say there is a lack of courage to do the right thing across the whole of the drug policy landscape, actually, including widely evidenced harm reduction measures. It shows the extent to which this area and the stigma attached is still very influential in the UK, at least. So that's why advocacy is really important, bringing together the necessary coalition of voices needed to create enough pressure and momentum for change, all the while working to prepare people and systems for when change does happen, so it's not linear. We need to work in parallel to make up for the many, many years that have been lost while psychedelic research was censored. However, in other countries, advocacy efforts are succeeding in expanding access. Perhaps the most successful has been in Australia, where the charity Mind Medicine worked with other advocates and using existing evidence to persuade regulators to license MDMA for the treatment of PTSD and psilocybin for depression. After a slow start, as a sign of progress, Australia's largest private health insurer has committed 10 million to funding MDMA therapy for PTSD. The Veterans Department have also confirmed that they will fund treatment for those in their care. It's likely this will bring similar demands from other groups, such as first responders, which will be difficult to refuse. And as previously mentioned, there are schemes approved both in Czech Republic and Germany. And as some of you may know, Poland has made a significant step of running its first program to train MDMA therapists in conjunction with the Multidisciplinary Studies Association of Psychedelic Studies. So we feel we need a corresponding social movement and advocacy campaign in the UK and elsewhere, and this can grow in unexpected places as we need a wider coalition as possible. In particular, demands from police and emergency services can influence public and policymaker attitudes. They have a significant need, as previously discussed, and are impacted by the lack of effective solutions. This has major implications for society. Trauma spillover can happen in families and in the streets, repeating and reinforcing the cycle of trauma. If we want policing to change, we need to improve the mental health crisis in policing. Police need psychedelics so they can be better and more compassionate, Once the police are asking for access to drugs, it changes public opinion for everyone. The police can be key allies in driving reform. So we're working to bring the police and other emergency services to demand access to psychedelics as part of a duty of care by running an awareness campaign in the media and also developing ways for the police and others to access treatment so that we can break down barriers and gather more evidence, such as developing a legal retreat for serving police. And in the upcoming months, we'll be working with a number of other organisations to help drive change in the right direction. The recently formed Psychedelic Action Task Force is a coalition of UK medical professionals, including professors of psychiatry, put together by Professor David Nutt and Alex Adams, who, following the Australia model, will submit a petition requesting urgent change in access to psychedelics. We'll also be working with SaiPan, a UK-based organisation of psychedelic trial participants who advocate for participant-centred practice in trials and in treatments to make sure we develop the right models of care. And last but not least, we're helping to organise the Drug Policy Satellite event for the Law Enforcement and Public Health Conference in Leeds next year, where there will be a lot of content about the intersection of mental health and well-being between law enforcement and people made vulnerable by current drug policy and practice, and how to go about improving that. There'll be a big focus on trauma and innovative new treatments, including psychedelics. The full conference will follow that satellite event, a real gathering of people invested in driving positive change and improving the lives of all people in this space. We're aiming to feature a session in the main conference on this topic. So please come and join us if you have an interest. So if you have an interest in this, for any questions or more information on any of this, please get in touch with me via my email, chris@oevpartners.com. I'm happy to share this presentation with everyone, and also, for anyone to get in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Please send your presentation to Maria so we can share it with our participants. And yes, thank you. This is very comprehensive presentation with scientific evidence. This is very interesting and very helpful for us. Dear participants, please feel free to ask any questions to Chris. So you can use chat, or you can so we have a couple of minutes for that. No questions so far? Yes, I think it's a really new topic for most of the participants, and it's really, we need time to absorb and to get.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And so I think we can go further and move to another excellent presenter. So the next speaker will be Maryna Mormul, co-founder of the Fenix project, working with veterans and their families to improve access to modern mental health care, also involved in advocacy efforts in Ukraine through the Ukrainian Psychedelic Research Assistant. So Maryna, the floor is yours. And if you have a presentation, you can share slides.
Спасибо за эту возможность. Я попробую сейчас показать презентацию. Я не готовилась к этому. Сейчас нашла та, которая, может быть, сегодня самая
I was
актуальная.
not frankly prepared to show slides, but I have tried to find some. So give me a second, please.
Видно?
So can you see my slides?
Игорь, подтвердите мне, видно что-то, экран?
Igor, can you please confirm that you can see my slides?
Not yet. Пока не видно.
Я уже поняла. Ну, также, не знаю, я Марии прислала, нет возможности
Well, I
показать.
actually have sent my slides to Maria, so maybe Maria would be sharing instead of me, but let me try again.
Мария, можешь ты включить слайды?
Maria, could you please share the slides for Maryna? Okay, I will start presenting then. We found 20 slides, and then we will see how it goes, because I can always share my presentation and email my presentation to all the participants of this meeting. It's very nice to speak after our prominent speakers who have been in the psychedelic landscape for quite a while in Spain, in the UK, after speakers who have international influence. By the way, I personally know Michael Woods, your partner. We also heard one of your presentations at the UN drug policy meeting about 2 years ago, and I think that's a very important topic that might really have a great influence on the international context. We had your presentation, your video translated, and we showed them to our authorities, to our controlling authorities, who actually try to cause barriers to start it. So actually, I don't know what is happening. Something is apparently happening. So now a couple of words about my background. By the way, I'm not going to speak exactly according to the slides, but the slides showcase some specific critical moments in our history. So I am a psychologist by my background, but actually later on we could say a lot of mental problems among people in Ukraine, and I was also certified as a psychiatrist, and now I actually do a lot of advocacy among psychotherapists, psychiatrists in Ukraine. And in 2020, we founded an association of mental psychic studies, and we do a lot of advocacy in the country. Unfortunately, psychedelics are not allowed to be used even for scientific research in Ukraine. So we are advocating for that. We have a cohort of lawyers who communicate with international communities, with our colleagues from the Czech Republic, from Spain, who are very helpful in organizing internal roundtables for our government to show how psychedelics use could be implemented for the scientific research. About 3 years ago, it happened so that we visited Switzerland, and in Switzerland I got to experience the Swiss experience in more detail, and I attended a big conference in Switzerland, so I got to know first president of the Psychedelic Association in Switzerland, Dr. Uri Stick, and also their organization, SEPT, and they provided a lot of information for Ukraine so that we could at least initiate some first scientific studies. And in Ukraine, we have about 150 psychiatrists, including myself and my husband, who is also a co-founder of the Psychedelic Studies Association in Ukraine. We have been trained among other 150 psychiatrists in using psychedelics. And so 3 years ago, we visited Spain, and in Spain, the psychedelic landscape is totally different. And we are in the recent 2 years, so after the war started in Ukraine, we are dealing with a lot of war veterans who have complex PTSD, and we are trying to apply different types of psychedelic therapy, including psilocybin and MDMA. So far, we have very short treatment programs, just several days, and we are presenting our experience as a new format that totally meets the requirements to psychotherapy. But about a year and a half ago, together with Dr. Jose and Oscar Soto from Barcelona University, chair of psychiatry. We actually worked on a research protocol, and we have almost finalized it, and we do hope that in the future we will have a chance to do some fundraising, and then we hope to do the research, and after the research gives us its first outcomes, it will make possible for ourselves to attend different conferences, to second conferences. So far, we have about 120 cases, documented cases, though they do not fit all the requirements of a clinical trial. And at this stage, we have 2% of cases that were not quite successful, but at the same time were not totally unsuccessful. So we support therapeutic settings. We have a group of therapists training people in Ukraine for psychotherapeutic support and different other methodologies like FS methodology. And we work with different forms of PTSD, sorry. We work with different categories of people: widows who lost their husbands to the war, adults who lost their sons, sometimes the only sons, to the war, also victims of sexual violence, prisoners of war. So these are the categories that receive different kinds of therapies, therapeutic assistance formats, but in these groups, this traditional therapy usually does not work and is failing. That's why we believe that some psychedelics might be necessary. We also deliver psychotherapeutic sessions, and in Ukraine we have organized a scientific research center uniting Ukrainian researchers and scientists and their foreign colleagues. And after this webinar, I'm going to email some information to Dr. Jose, because we also do studies of biomarkers, and we are collecting different categories of data. And please, yes, one more slide forward. So I just wanted to say that Fenix cooperates with different universities of the world, and in Ukraine we have a chance to do studies at different levels, molecular studies, and in one of the Nordic journals, Psychiatry News, we recently published an article dedicated to methylation of genomes, and actually we advocate for psychedelic therapy, and we're quite advanced in Ukraine. And we also collected different specialists in mental health, physiologists, psychiatrists, psychotherapists, and we also have a unit that develops AI tools, and we have also new diagnostic methods using eye tracking, voice recognition, and all these tools we actually are ready to share. And I will be sharing my presentation with all the participants, and I will be emailing my presentation to Maria. And it includes a lot of slides dedicated to our academic research, to science. And we do understand that today scientific research is the most efficient to prove, to showcase the effective use of psychedelics today. And we could see the system in Australia, the system in Switzerland, and we can see that only a strictly controlled use of psychedelics gives you some data, some outcomes, quite visible outcomes, and we would be glad to collaborate with different institutes globally, and our cooperation and collaboration with our Spanish colleagues consists of two stages. First is the screening diagnostics in Ukraine, and then the therapy itself is gonna take place in Spain. And hopefully, after that, we will be able to present at different conferences to discuss different kinds of data on psychedelics use in psychiatry and psychology. Thank you, and I'm ready to answer your questions if you have any. Thank you so much, Maryna. And I want to ask, how are you doing advocacy in Ukraine? Well, we are quite actively involved in advocacy today, and we are getting some help from our Polish colleagues, and our specialists have been invited to Poland for MDMA-assisted therapy or meds. And by the way, Poland has allocated quite a budget for scientific research, and we are now thinking of a joint research. But of course, things are going on at a very low pace in Ukraine. So actually, last autumn, we had some hopes because we had the frame already designed, justified, and the ketamine therapy is under study. It has been under study for almost 2 years, so there is a structure already in place where we could also test psilocybin and MDMA. So we have already trained several hundreds of specialists under this METS program, and we also have a training in Ukraine. So last autumn, we hoped that we could be authorized for scientific research, but it never happened. So with this year, we're trying again, but again, our police and the Ministry of Internal Affairs are opposing such an initiative. And last year we had a visit by a Dutch psychiatrist, a great advocate for psychedelic therapy, who cooperates with Ukraine, and he actually does a lot of advocacy, and he included Ukraine as a potential participant country for a 2-year study of MDMA-assisted therapy, but so far we have not been approved. And you know that in Europe we have the psychedelic therapy booming, so a lot of people discuss it, advocate for it, but in Ukraine, of course, we have to do a lot of advocacy, and we are sure that today it is better to provide this therapy and to do the trials beyond the territory of Ukraine, also because of the war. By the way, we had a prisoner of war, a doctor who spent a year in prison. He had a resistant depression. He received 12 rounds of therapy, also xenon therapy, ketamine therapy, and of course our program is quite short. It's the preparation days, one psychedelic session. So with this person, we even had 2 sessions, one session, and when the second session 6 months later. So after these 2 sessions, our patient really improved and is doing well today. But again, in Ukraine, we decided to do the screening and selection of patients for the trials, and then the second phase, the trial itself, is going to take place somewhere else in countries where it is allowed to conduct such a trial. Well, I actually had a similar question to Chris. So in the UK, do you have any opposition similar to that in Ukraine? I mean, from the police, from the Home Department? Chris? Chris, are you here? Could you hear the question?
Masha, can you please repeat in English your question?
Yes, sure. Because I was confused because of the silence. Okay. But now you hear me. Yes? Okay, good. So Chris, yes, my question was for you. If you have the same issue as Maryna mentioned in Ukraine, that there is a resistance from law enforcement to conduct research and to promote medicinal use of psychedelics, and maybe Jose also can comment on that.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I mean, it's something we're trying to change. I mean, I think privately, police leaders I've spoken to are aware of the scale of the issue and are not against. But there are some structural issues actually in just even acknowledging that the job causes trauma. They actually don't want to admit that because it would mean taking responsibility for it. And with that comes financial, personal responsibility and risk. But I think it's also not helped by the fact that there are, and aside from psychedelics, there aren't effective treatments. So actually acknowledging that someone has a condition means that they will effectively stop being a police officer because there's no route back. So this is the argument we're trying to make is that if they actually engage with psychedelics, they could actually create a very positive circle whereby officers would feel more ready to acknowledge that they have mental health problems because they wouldn't see it as the end of their career, and that would actually expedite access to treatment, which could then rehabilitate them and get back into serving and being a police officer. And we expect that whole process would kind of create a more compassionate approach generally to themselves and then to others, and could actually change, how policing's relationships with the public. So yes, publicly, police leaders find it very difficult to acknowledge. But I think one of the slides you might have seen, there was a reference to healthcare workers. So in Scotland, the ambulance service is actually engaging with psilocybin, and they've got some ambulance service workers who are coming out and speaking about it. And we think what we'll be doing is trying to use that to encourage other emergency services also to come forward. And together as a group, we hope to kind of defuse the political risk for police leaders to come forward and advocate for psychedelics, because really, practically, they want the solutions, but politically, they just fear that they'll never be forgiven if they advocate for access to drugs for their officers.
Yeah, thank you. Maryna, you have a comment.
Да, я хотела добавить и подтвердить все
Yes,
слова
I just
Криса.
wanted
И
to add
из таких практических
to what
наших
Chris
заметок, что мы видим,
just
должна
mentioned,
быть огромная
and
кампания
from
по
our
адвокации,
practical
по просвещению. У нас уже
experience, we can
существуют две
see that we
кампании,
need
которые этим занимаются. Одна —
a
это
very
ассоциация.
comprehensive
Ну,
campaign,
к ней вопрос, естественно, вы будете прибегать то, что
education,
вы
awareness-raising
проповедуете.
campaign,
Есть
advocacy
другие
campaign,
организации
and actually we have our
но что
association doing
сейчас
the
как бы интересно
advocacy,
из
but
хороших
usually
людей,
people
которые
are
были у нас
telling
на
them that, you know, you
лечении,
are advocating for
практически
that
половина,
because you're
во-первых, они
actually
имеют
profiting this.
военные должности,
And
они не ветераны. То есть если они
also, you
получают
know that
диагноз
many
ПТСР,
people
точно так же они все, они
who
не
are
чувствительны к
not
службе.
even war veterans
Они
but
точно
are
требуют
active
поддержки,
militaries,
восстановления лечения.
once they are
И
diagnosed with
многие из этих людей,
PTSD,
во-первых,
they
имеют как бы
can no
политические
longer
амбиции,
get back
которые
to the service.
имеют уже
And
какую-то репутацию,
that's one
и
of the
они не
obstacles.
готовы
Many
рассказывать о
people have
своем опыте.
also some
Если половина
political
наших
ambitions.
участников, они делятся, у нас есть
They
открытые
have a
соцсети,
reputation
мы делаем
about
такие,
their psychedelic experience
господи,
in public
американская организация
networks
очень
or
большая
in
с
public in
ветеранами
general. So,
Heroic Heart.
by the way, we
Вот у них очень
collaborate with
открытые
a
такие
US
соцсети
organization
с
who works with
историями.
veterans. It's
Некоторые наши
Heroic,
участники делятся
and
этими же
they have
историями, а другая
open
половина
networks,
говорят, мы не можем,
social
мы не
networks
чувствуем
where
барьеров,
people share stories.
и
So
мы не
some
можем,
people
мы
are
очень
ready
хотим там
to share
подаваться в
their
какие-то
personal stories,
политические
whilst
организации
others
дальше. И это
say that
исключено. То
that
есть на
would
данном этапе
destroy,
это
totally
большая пока
destroy
стигма,
our
и
career. So
мы
we
даже сейчас
cannot
вовлекаем
share. So
в
there
опыт
is
людей. У нас было
a lot
огромное
of
количество людей,
stigma
которым за 60,
out
которые
there,
на самом деле
and we try
имели
to involve more
огромные
and more
сами
people.
сомнения в
Like
этой терапии,
we
но они
had a
после,
lot of
знаете, как выбора
people
не было,
over
они сами были
60
согласны, они, у нас не
who
было
had
согласия.
very serious doubts
И мы
about
записываем интервью с такими
psychedelic-assisted
состоявшимися
therapy,
взрослыми
but they
женщинами,
had
с
actually
мамами.
no choice.
Наши
They
матери
had to
прошли
agree, and then
psychedelic-терапию, мы
they
тоже
could
как бы сейчас
see
записываем с
how
ними
effective
эти
it was. So these are
интервью, чтобы это было
primarily
таким
quite elderly
не
people or
молодой, и как вот
adults,
раньше
mothers,
говорили те,
parents
кто
of
к нам ездит, говорит, не, ну он был наркоманом, но пойдет вам
the
снова. Ну, это так вот,
military, and
знаете, как в народе говорится, да? Поэтому мы
so again,
собираем такие
this is
данные, мы поддерживаем
something that
людей
could
в
really
научном
help.
контексте, сейчас
And
записывать начинаем
so we
ну, на
collect the
украинском, мы
data,
будем
we
переводить уже на
try
английский
to
интервью с
support
учеными.
people who
В
do
общем, начинаем это
research,
движение,
and
те,
we
которые
are
не боятся
going
выступить, те,
to
которые не боятся просто рассказать,
record and
и те, которые
translate to
будут участвовать
Ukrainian
в этом
interviews with some
национальном
scientists, with
образовательном курсе
scholars.
для
These
терапевтов и
are the people who are
психиатров.
not afraid
Спасибо.
to share, who are ready to share, and who also are going to be involved in this
Yes,
training for
I'm
psychiatrists and
completely
psychologists.
agree with Chris Jenkins. I don't understand. I don't speak Russian, so I can say anything about what has Maryna spoke about right now. But I really agree with Chris. I think that politics are really aware, not against these new treatments, but because I think they believe that that it is kind of risky to just say, okay, go ahead with this right now. But they are coming. I mean, psychedelics are coming. If they want right now or not, they are coming. When the FDA approved the first one here, I think it's gonna be the Compass one, psilocybin. Then the others will come. What we have to do is just to keep the pressure with the politics and tell them that how it's going to be the use, and just give them the warranties they need to settle down this, the laws or the way to use them in the specific countries or regions. They are coming. For example, our society, the SMC here in Spain, the National Psychedelic Society here of Medicine, we are going to have a meeting with the government, well, part of the government department in the early 2026. So probably we are not going to get nothing with this meeting, but at least they are going to first listen us. So it's our what we have to do is just keep pressure in this way.
Yes, thank you, Jose. Maryna.
Если у нас еще 3 минуты есть, я
Yes, if
добавлю
we
то,
have
что
3
очень
more minutes,
хорошее
I would like
влияние
to add
оказывает
that
культурный компонент
something that
на
has proven really
трансформацию. У нас в
effective
Украине произошел перевод фильма
involve people
Conceptual
from
Land
the
про
culture
ayahuasку,
or
хотя как бы
involve
мы
cultural
не используем этот метод, мы его не проповедуем в
things
Украине, он
into
как бы
this
хорош
advocacy. Like, for
для
instance,
тех
in
народов,
Ukraine,
где он как бы возник. У
we
нас есть особое
translated
как бы
one
тоже
of
про
the
это
films, one
мнение,
of the
но
movies
там мы
to
показываем
the
эсketamин, и
Ukrainian
он
language.
показан на широкий
This is a
круг
movie about one of
людей
the
и
methods that is
приглашенных,
not quite
и
popular, that
ветеранов.
is not
Наши
used in
участники нашей
Ukraine.
программы вышли
So
и
we're
смогли
not
рассказать про свой
advocating
опыт,
for it,
и
but
на самом деле ветераны
the
те,
movie
которые
was about
рассказывают,
war
они рассказывают,
veterans. So after
на разных
we
конференциях,
actually
и это
showed the
самое
movie, we
большое
invited
влияние
our
тех
war
людей,
veterans
которые
to
прошли уже
share
терапию.
their war
Ничего лучше
experience.
не работает, чем
And
вот такой вот
I
как
think
бы
that
живой
people
отклик,
who
и мы
have
подаемся все
already
время на какие-то гранты.
graduated
У нас много
from the
украинских
therapy
хороших
is the
режиссеров
best
и на
tool to
Netflix, и на
persuade
остальных грантах.
others.
Это
By
просто
the way,
снять
we submit a lot
не
of
просто как мы снимаем
applications
эти
for
документальные
grants.
маленькие
We
видео,
have
а
a
снять
lot of
прям кино.
Ukrainian
И то, что я
movie
слышу, мне говорят,
directors,
сейчас вот в Женеве тоже
and
наши девушки подают на
we want
большой
to
грант,
get a
чтобы
grant
снять
to
фильм о
maybe
жертвах
have
сексуального насилия. И я сразу же к ним шла
a
как бы на
movie
хост и говорю,
short
что обязательно давайте
dedicated
покажем и
to
решение. Мы
different
включили
problematic
сегодняшнюю
areas.
терапию в
Like,
такую
for instance,
заявку,
one of the
поэтому мы на
directors
самом
is
деле
planning
двигаемся
to
все
actually
направления. Мы
direct
пишем
a
договор
movie
МАТЭ. Вот
about
сегодня вот мы
sexual
закончили писать
violence, and
письмо
I was
просто
offering to
чтобы
him that maybe you
люди
could
становились там
also involve psychedelic
амбассадорами,
therapy
как
as
бы,
one
и
of the
больше говорили
tools
об
to
этом, потому что в
cope
нашей
with the
вот как бы
consequences of
среде у
the
нас все об этом говорят,
sexual
всем это
violence.
понятно, но
And we
насколько
want
длинный
to have
путь
more
вот,
celebrities, people from culture,
борьбы с этой стигмой
to be our
и
ambassadors,
разделения
the
рекреационного
ambassadors of
приема
this type
и
of therapy. And of course,
терапевтического,
there is
что
a
это
very
большая
long
работа.
way
Я
to
очень рада,
go
что
still,
мы как бы делаем это
and a
все
lot of
вместе
effort
и
is
объединяемся
necessary
для этих целей. Благодарю вас
to
за участие.
actually counter this stigma that is there. And I want to thank you all for your attention and participation.
Thank you very much, Maryna. So we have only 1 minute until the end of this webinar. So thank you very much for all the speakers for your excellent presentation. We will share your PowerPoint slides with our participants. And so I wanted to say that this is, let's say, one of the first activities we are doing in this direction, but we want to do it more systematically. So you can, unfortunately, I couldn't share the correct link to our podcasts. We touch base a little bit this topic on a little bit last year, and it was an interview with Maryna. And so, but you can check our podcast Narcopragmatic. Unfortunately, it's only in Russian, but still it's very interesting. So those who speak Russian can listen this podcast, and also please read our position paper on this topic, and please you can provide your feedback on email. What do you want else we do in this topic? Do you want us to more capacity building activities, more informational, maybe trainings, or maybe a mapping of situation and readiness in countries to promote this topic? Please share your thoughts. This is very important for us, so we have this capacity and possibility to develop this topic. And thank you very much for participation. And so we will share recording of the webinar and presentations, and have a good rest of the day and rest of the week.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.